the Somalia case is very interesting because I actually did an article for The Nation just before the elections around how Al-Shabaab has been using social media, how Al-Shabaab was using social media platforms to
TikTok
keep
included.
itself alive.
Okay.
Right? At that time, that article was about Facebook, right? But we had identified similar networks on Twitter. We had identified similar networks on TikTok, right? And I remember the first day I had met Neema and she was like, oh, you don't do that article? I was like, yes. And she was like, I was very interested in your article because, and I thought to myself it wasn't that effective, but she told me that the one thing that makes social, especially extremist content on social media very dangerous is that it enables these actors to be able to reach audiences they would have never reached if they had never existed. Right? It's like just giving Al-Shabaab a radio station. You get? It allows the idea to be kept alive in ways that we had never actually thought about before.
Let me ask this, and maybe it came out in your article.
Yeah.
Is there a way you can directly link the terrorist message actually converting youth to terrorism activities, or even on the moral stand, you know, that there is some content and that it is contributing to the moral fabric?
So for me, okay, on my end, I'll say there's ways in which I saw this pan out, okay?
Okay.
One is people put, for example, bomb tutorials in groups.
Okay.
Right? So think about it as someone who's trying to actually organize perhaps a terrorist attack. Like they have groups where they're able to actually coordinate, organize, and do the necessary things. Alongside that time when I was doing that investigation, it did emerge that actually the Dusit attack was partly organized on Facebook.
Okay.
This is something that has been published. It is on record.
Okay.
So there's ways in which there are different levels. It's not just about ideological conversion. It's even in terms of operation. Right? And if operation, not just operation, it's operation and consolidation. Right? And even just message delivery.
Okay.
They preach to their own choir.
Right.
I will hand over to Neema maybe to talk about the conversion aspect, because I don't feel like I'm necessarily an expert.
But there's something that she did say, and we need to speak to, and it's not being alarmist, but you mentioned it there, where the leader of majority, Shongwa, in defense of TikTok said, my teenage daughter introduced me to TikTok, and I see, you know, what happens shouldn't be banned in its entirety. But she said something that's striking. Through this platform, they're able to collect data from the leader of majority in our country, knowing the kind of influence that he has. Is it any surprise the United States, India, in the name of espionage and data collection, have banned TikTok, and especially India in a larger way than the US?
Yeah, but I really want her to maybe contribute.
I'll add
that,
to the
that question of conversion is really important. Yeah, because it's something that actually does need to be addressed.
So let's talk about the conversion. There's ways, yes. So I think the direct answer is yes and no. So the yes, over time, you can actually be able to monitor, and there's been lots of studies, you know, and not just in Kenya. There's been you know, in the UK, the 3 young girls who traveled to ISIS, we've been able to actually do a longitudinal, and now they have children who are like 7 years of age or something like that. We've been able to have enough time to actually assess their journey into ISIS through social media. So there have been ways when there's enough time, but there are also covert ways in which communication is organized and radicalization is done. You know, there's private groups on Facebook. There's, you know, that takes a little longer to unravel. But we've seen big cases like the January 6th organization in the US. I personally, in my master's studies, looked at Al-Shabaab messaging, and they even had, you know, newsletters in Kisii and in other dialects, not just in in Swahili and Somali, and that began to change how we were understanding it. And when Garissa attack happens, and Westgate, and you're waiting to see names that you associate with Al-Shabaab, and then you're reading names that sound very familiar to your neighbor or your brother, it began to come alive, that people were being reached with a message that they never would have imagined themselves responding to, but it's coming in a very friendly format. So I think
so it's not a threat, it's a reality.
Yeah, we really need to think in a more robust way.
I think what jumped out to me was when there was actually a terrorist attack and it was live on Facebook.
New Zealand,
and then also I remember in 2015 when the then Minister for Interior came out and said there's been no Al-Shabaab attack, and then they go live and show you dead bodies of KDF. There's been ways that we can't say. And what's sad in that whole situation is, are we training KDF and our police to use social media just as effectively as the terrorists are doing? Because we need to stop just waiting and responding to things, to being more intentional. So in our counterterrorism strategies, counter-radicalization, we actually need to understand how these apps work and use them.
So understand them instead of just wholly ban them. Or
banning is a very rudimentary, because you'll ban TikTok today, tomorrow something else similar or worse will come up. You can't keep banning everything.
So the Somalia one is so tricky.
No, and it's good that it happened when we're having this debate on the petition, because we have to see what game we're playing, and there's geopolitics, that comes to play as well.
And for them, if you consider like the Al-Shabaab issue, it's not something to joke about, right?
Yeah.
So if your content moderation policies, if the Somali government has the evidence, and your content moderation policies are failing, right, absolutely failing to identify that kind of content, right, like I can completely see why they would take before we even try and figure this thing out, given the kind of threat that they are facing, especially with the comeback of Al-Shabaab, like that's happening right now. It leaves TikTok in a very tough position.
And you can't talk about Al-Shabaab and leave Kenya out. It's not a Somalia problem. We get very many attacks, and we pay the price for Al-Shabaab and even some of the counter attacks. So going back now, I think that's a good position to put the majority of the parliament majority leader in. I think not just him, and I don't want to, single him out. I think
it's just an example.
Both sides of parliament, we had similar arguments.
It's very bipartisan.
It was very, we had people from Azimio, people from Kenya Kwanza, coming in defense. And what we need to remind them is there's so much at stake. And maybe they need to sort of like go back to their committees, all the committees that are involved, and really look at it in a more comprehensive way, because we need consistency in policy. So what policy did Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki,
yes.
I'm really sorry for getting his name, the CS's name wrong. What informed his decision to ban WorldCoin, and what decision are we making to even begin dismissing in the preliminary conversations in Parliament? Why are we thinking it's a joke, So the violations are similar. So can we have some consistency in how we're applying the rules? Because as Kenyans, we need to know, how are we protected, how are we at risk, and what is actually the government doing to help us. This is also time for Communication Authority to come out and tell us, if they are concerned, because Bob did his job as an alert citizen. He has brought an issue for public discourse. It's not his job, but he's an alert Kenyan citizen. He should be commended for that. And we can't go so much into breaking down his reasons and rationale for it. The point is, he has brought it out.
And there's a case to be
had. What should concern us is, do the regulatory authorities understand what's at stake, and are
What
they
needs to be
equally disturbed by what's happening? And so what are they going to do about it?
And I think also, do they understand what needs to be done?
To be done.
Yeah, which is also equally important.
So
Yeah, and we have a new Children's Act,
Yes.
you know, that is, it's an act after it's gone through, right?
Yes.
So the new Children's Act is actually one of the strongest instruments, I think, in terms of regulating the internet and online content. You
But
could actually...
I have a pushback on that because there's the question of whether children's legislation, for example, in the US, could lead to the breakage of encryption across the world. Because the way it's been painted to look is that if you break encryption in one corner of the world, that's it.
should be across. Okay.
So
That
you know,
remains to be seen.
child
but-
sexual safety laws, there've been a lot of issues.
Yeah,
But,
but
yeah.
going back to Ishungwa's teenage daughters,
Yes.
Yeah. As an
he
example.
could find himself in trouble if they actually got exploited online.
That's true.
Using the Children's Act we have right now,
Right.
we could, if any of them was like, say, catfished or you know,
They hacked into
exposed
his
to, or
accounts
even radicalized, you know, and came into that, because of allowing them to use that platform, as a parent, he could actually be held accountable by the laws we currently have. So the one thing I love about Kenya is we have very progressive laws. We try, you know, to beat them from all sides, but we actually have a solid constitution. We've got laws that if we applied them, could actually get us out of a lot of trouble. The problem is we all understand the law and we always can push and bend it to work in our favor. But using the instruments we currently have, we need to actually, you know, start to doing this. So we need to actually see what the children activists can have to say about this petition. I think it's something that they should open to public
And many other states.
Well, yeah, because
participation and
Yeah.
get enough voices. But we really need to graduate the kind of conversation we're having around.
So you've mentioned geopolitics, and we can speak of it freely whether or not it's at play, especially since we started hearing concerns around TikTok from the United States. I think northwards of 30 states have banning it from government officers using it on government gadgets.
federally,
yeah,
I think.
yes.
Even
So
federally.
at least a state is going to be affecting that in January. And India has also done that in the name, and Europe, in the name of protecting data because they feel that China is watching. Yeah, is there a case, or is there a little wonder that these world leaders are actually seeing a problem with TikTok, and should that worry us?
Well, again, like TikTok has a hard case, because to be honest, now let's look at the thread of China's misgivings and activity, okay?
Yeah.
One, who built an entire AU headquarters and bugged the hell out of the place? Who?
China.
The Chinese. Okay, number two, who recently was found to have been hacking Kenya's governmental systems for almost 3 years in the name of trying to find, of looking to try and understand how we can assess our debt position? China. Or rather, allegedly, right?
Yes.
Let's be clear. So, I mean, there has been reason to you know, suspect the intentions of the CCP, right? And that they have created this, like as a result, they have, in essence, created this monster application that would allow them to gather as much as they want from the entire world. But that's not to say, to be honest, that the Americans have not been caught
Thank you.
doing the same thing. You know, and when you think about it from that dichotomy, it's largely about how do we just figure this thing out for ourselves? How do we just take the initiative? And again, like Neema keeps saying, stop being too dazzled about all these things that are going on and say, okay, we have our own perspective to bring to the table, right? And this is how we feel about this problem. And yeah, take it or leave it, guys. If you want to operate, you know, this is how, please protect our users in this way, protect their data in this way, and let's come at it from the point of consumer protection specifically, right? The moral fabric and all that stuff puts it to too much debate. But there are legit concerns about the exposure of you know, sexual material to minors
Yes.
on the platform. It's too easy to find, right? within these platforms, that is problematic.
And you don't have to go looking for it.
You don't have to go looking for it. It comes to you.
Right.
It's fed
Because
to you.
these algorithms essentially have been created in such a way that they're addicted to harmful information.
Okay.
Right? This is not the first year that they have been trying to fix these problems within these companies. They themselves don't even know how these algorithms work. Right? I'm not kidding. There are several interviews where people have been interviewed. They've been asked, do you know how this thing works? They're like, I don't know.
These are people from within the system.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
so to answer that question, who controls TikTok from Kenya? Is there presence from what you've heard?
Well, just go. I mean, TikTok has representatives
Yes.
in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, it does have representatives in Kenya. They host the TikTok Africa Influencer Awards in Nairobi, where they awarded our Mr. Dan as, the guy for Dan as the number one
chef.
influencer, the chef guy,
Yeah.
right? As the number one influencer. Like, they have a presence.
Yeah. That's their way of mainstreaming this.
Yeah,
but in
exactly.
terms of what rules that they play under, they're not under, they don't really run under our jurisdiction.
I don't know. I don't know what, I don't have
Now
an
that's
answer
the
to that
conversation we
yet.
want to have in
Exactly.
Parliament,
Right.
because we need to know, what power we have, when they're operating. And, the Reuters report, whether it's discounted or not, it has some issues that we should discuss. If indeed we are the top users of TikTok,
As it
if
claims, yes.
indeed we are, what are we getting out of it? Okay, and this is how I'm going to answer your geopolitical question. Let's not really focus on, China, Russia, US. Let's look at it. Who else is benefiting? Let's look at it from a political economy side, right? Yes, TikTok is harvesting the data. Oracle is storing the data. Where is Oracle? And where do Oracle pay their taxes? So when we actually look at the other players, and I think I have nothing against Oracle. I have nothing against all these companies, but should we only hold one part of the value chain or the supply chain accountable and not the entire ecosystem?
Okay.
I think it would be so much easier if all the parties were compelled to, and that's the ESG perspective, if Meta has been found, liable, and that's one of the impacts in the court ruling, right? Meta was actually found culpable for human rights violations in Kenya because of something its suppliers was doing, policies that its suppliers were implementing. So the same rule should apply across board, because all these big companies sign up to the Global Compact and sign up to all these, glamorous agreements where they vow to operate in an ethical manner.
Yeah.
So if you tell them that, TikTok is violating these rules, it will be up to them to make sure that their clients are compliant. Otherwise, they lose their business. So if you actually touched where the money is, it's going to be everyone's problem. And I think that's sometimes the best way to go when you're dealing with the private sector.
Okay.
If you actually, threaten, the pockets, they will become very responsive. They'll actually bring the solutions to you. They'll tell you, this is how we'll self-regulate. This is what we could do about it. This is how we could even train, regulators. Of course, that's a very tricky situation to go. But right now, what we need to see more of is, probably audit the current budget to see how much we're actually investing, because we've had infiltration of government, the entire e-citizen platform.
Oh yeah, there was that other hack.
In a few, not even months, in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Then we have this conversation, then we have WorldCoin. Like, what are we actually
It's
doing
too much,
as a country to insulate ourselves from these threats?
Right.
How much are we investing into IT security, cyber security, and even just, the resource capabilities? Are we introducing new courses in our universities to actually train this?
Right.
Or are we going to continue, you know, exporting our electoral systems to other countries so they control our data. Then we start crying open the servers, and you know, all these issues are interrelated. So if we don't have ownership and sovereignty in how we manage our data, then no one is going to do this work for us. EU is not going to develop regulations to protect us. Our former colonizer is not going to do it. Americans are not going to develop regulations that can cover us when it's their companies sometimes that violate those. We have to, and whether we like it or not, the whole of Africa is looking to Kenya for leadership, because we are seen as the Africa Silicon Savannah.
No, poor man's America.
Yes, and the Silicon Savannah. Oh God! Don't go with Odanga's version. You know, so there's responsibility that comes with that.
And we have an opportunity to.
We really can't afford to be sleeping on the job. We have to. We literally are setting the pace for the whole of Africa.
And when